All right, done.
Hello, and welcome to Combat COVID-19 Community Support. We are so glad that you've joined us this afternoon for Quaranteened, where we have a group of Central Oregon teenagers talking all things COVID-19 related. But before we get started today, just a little bit about us. We are really an informal coalition of community health leaders and healthcare providers that are working to bring you these live events focused on how you and your family can care for your health during the pandemic. And we are funded by the Central Oregon Health Council. We're going to dive right in, but very quickly, you should know that this event is provided for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for medical advice or should be taken as a medical opinion. If you do have a healthcare concern, please talk to your healthcare provider. And with that, I am so excited to turn it over to our quarantine group. And if you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube, please type comments and questions. We certainly want to hear from you as the conversation progresses. All right, take it away, Quarantened.
Hi guys, my name is Alana and I am a sophomore at Ben High, and I came here to spread joy and happiness without, spreading disease.
And hi there, I'm Francesca. I am a senior in high school, and I joined this just to start some conversation that can be helpful for people all over. And I'm going to introduce Kevin. He's a local counselor, and he's going to be hanging out during the show.
Hey gang, welcome to Quarantined. Like Francesca said, I'm Kevin. I'm a counselor. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
All right, everybody. I'm Evan. I'm a junior at Mountain View High School in Bend, Oregon. I'm 17 years old, and I'm doing this because I feel like teens have a much different perspective than maybe the rest of the world does, and so we're just here to share that. And to kick off today, and what we're going to be talking about, we're talking about would you rather assert yourself back into society. Maybe if you had a job, go back to your job, knowing that you might be infected or spread infection, or knowing those risks, or would you rather stay hunkered down, as most of you probably are? So Francesca, I know this question directly applies to you, so I'm just going to let you kick it off.
Yeah. So coincidentally enough, I got an email today from my work, which is a sports facility indoor park, saying that we are supposed to be opening up Monday, which seems a little premature, a little risky. I personally am a little bit nervous about it, but I know that it's very split and there's a lot of people eager to get back out. And then there's also people that are worried about, doing things too soon. So me personally, I'm a little bit nervous about it. I am okay with staying home a little bit longer, but it's definitely split down the middle. And I know I work for a local business, and I'm sure my owners are excited to start bringing in some revenue again. So I understand both sides of it, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Alana, do you have anything that might, would you, and what would be your response to the question? Would you rather, assert yourself back into, what your everyday life was? Maybe it was like a job or even school, perhaps, or knowing that there's this risk of infection and spreading it, and that, you might prolong this whole pandemic, or would you rather just stay hunkered down and, at home?
Well, I would probably choose to stay at home because if we stay at home now, there is going to be easier to transition into normalcy later on. And I know that along with my work, I work at Boys and Girls Club, which is a place that's typically full of hundreds of kids. And that was an obvious thing that we had to shut down because of COVID. And so we have to we have to take a lot of precaution when we open back up this summer, if we open back up this summer. So I think I would choose to stay home. All right.
What was that?
What do you think?
I think, well, personally, I never wasn't, I was laid off for a very short while, and it was, and then I got hired back, amidst this whole thing. Luckily, it's not a social job. I'm detailing cars, so it's not really something I have to be too worried about because I don't come in contact with a whole lot of people other than, one or two of my coworkers all day. So for me, I've been back out there except for my job. Luckily, it isn't very social. However, I know most people, like, for instance, I know quite a few of my peers and my friends work in clothing stores or, maybe such things as that, where you would be, in a very social situation with other people all the time. And it's really split down the middle for them. I feel like a lot of people want to get back out and they're itching to just go start working again or still go hang out with their friends again. And they're not really taking the risk into to consideration. They just want to go do it. But a lot of them are, being sensible and, staying hunkered down and, not putting themselves out in a risky sort of situation.
So it seems like we're all somewhat on the same page of accepting wanting to stay home and do our part. But I know that within our age group, we've got a range of sophomores to seniors here that almost daily we're seeing a lot of our peers breaking the social distancing rules, continuing to go out, continuing to act as if there's nothing going on. And so, Alana, like, how do you handle that? How does it make you feel seeing kids our age not following the guidelines?
It's confusing and a little frustrating because I feel like if everyone actually followed it and didn't have this careless attitude, then like we could actually go out and like live a somewhat normal life after this sooner than we would if we're all like being careless. And like the only times that I go out really are to get groceries for my family and like tutor my sister. And if I'm out in like civilization, I try and always wear a mask. So I just feel like if you are going out and like doing things, at least like try to protect yourself and protect others.
Yeah, it's somewhat frustrating to see. I'm almost jealous also of these kids that are having a blast. But against it is against the law. I've seen we were talking about it earlier. I've seen a full basketball court in a park just full of kids, and they're playing a full game and everything. And it was breaking the social distancing guidelines and rules and everything. But they were just having a blast. And I knew some of the kids too. And I'm like, well, I really, really, really want to go play basketball with them. But then again, I have to do my part, and I have to listen to the health officials over what I want to do, and just keep a clear mind about it, and take into consideration that I would be harming a lot of other people, even if it weren't me potentially. So that's just sort of my view on it, I guess. So branching off of that, I know, like you were saying, Francesca, that it is, I would say, mostly in our age group that I see other people, at least from my experience, that I see other people breaking, the rules and everything, and going out and socializing and being together in larger groups than you're supposed to be. And so I'm just wondering, where does that stem from? Do you think it's carelessness? Do you think people just genuinely don't believe that it's going to happen? Do you think they have this sort of sense of invincibility that maybe it won't affect them? Or where do you think that this all comes from? Do you think it's just a rebellion sort of mindset, or where does it come from within kids of our age group?
I think one of the hardest things is that when the virus first came out, one of the main things that people said was that it only affects elderly. And that was everyone's mindset in the beginning. And so I know for myself, I was like, oh, this is a really scary thing. We need to be more careful, but I'm not worried about getting sick. And the problem with that is it's kind of evolved into so much more in terms of, how contagious it is, and how, you don't know that you have it for the first 14 days, and you're spreading it the most during that time when you have no symptoms. And it's just so much more complex than that now. And I think in the beginning, it was introduced as this virus that doesn't really affect our age group. And there was a lot of unknown. And I think it comes from that partly. And I think also just a lot of kids our age, because we have social media so easily accessible, it's easy to read something and believe it or not believe it and then call it good. And I think where a lot of kids our age fall short is not doing their proper research and their proper investigating and looking into the science of it and the facts of it. And I think if a lot more people did that, the outcome would be a lot different. But I think because it's easy to open a social media post, read it, and not really do any further explanation or reading and calling it good, I think that does contribute to a lot on both ends as well. So I do think that's a factor too.
Yeah, I also think that what plays a pretty large role in these kids is that are breaking the rules mindset is they kind of cherry pick the information that they want to believe. And so maybe they see something that is put out by a reliable source that says, the heat kills the virus. So as soon as summer rolls around, we'll be doing okay. And then they're like, okay, well, that's cool. Even though they see 20 other sources that say that's not the case, but then they're just latching onto this information that they want to believe rather than what they should believe. And so I think that we just get this mindset of, okay, I saw this information, it benefits, me. It's like, well, I want to do, and maybe it says that, the pandemic won't go on much longer or something. So I'm just going to believe that and just ignore everything else because it's what I want to believe. So maybe I'm thinking it's just because they cherry pick, and I'm probably guilty of this as well, but they just cherry pick the information that they want to believe rather than what they should believe.
I think that it also partially comes from like social media and how it's being portrayed right now. I know on a lot of social medias, it's just being portrayed as like kind of a joke. And like, I know that a lot of people get through things like through humor. And I think that they've really made like this whole quarantine everything a meme, and they're just trying to make it lighthearted. But by doing that, it's kind of like making it not seem as real as it is and as like tough as it is, and it's just kind of making it a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think also like one of the main things I can think of is teens. It's always been a common stereotype that we think we're invincible, and it's always, oh, that won't happen to me, and I think that's always been a thing. Even when I was like just turning like 11, my mom was like, you're not invincible, like just with silly stuff. And now with something like this, I think it's really easy for healthy kids or even people who appear to be healthy to think that this kind of stuff won't happen to them. And the sad part is I think it won't really affect these people or really come through to them until someone they know or love gets sick. And that's what the whole point is of trying to prevent all this is so that doesn't have to happen. But it seems more and more prevalent that some people are just being required to learn the hard way, which I guess happens sometimes.
Yeah. I think a large issue, at least for me, for sure, is that I wasn't taking it seriously. Okay, I didn't think it was a big deal until it was a huge issue in China. And then I didn't think it was going to be a big deal until it was a big deal here. So I think, and like me, most kids are thinking like it's not a big deal until I actually see it. And I know in Central Oregon, at least, we're not seeing too much evidence of the virus here. That there's not so much that's going on other than, everyone wearing masks and everything, but we're not seeing hospitals just exploding like in New York and stuff. And so we don't think it's that big of a deal until it really is. And I mean, for me, I didn't think it would be a big deal. I never thought that it would be. I mean, if you would have asked me 6 months ago, do you think that, this virus could potentially shut down everything if, it came to America? I would be like, no, that's crazy. Of course not. And then, yeah, here I am. And we're in the midst of, a global crisis. And it's kind of still disbelief, like, wow, it just kind of happened overnight. And so I think with a lot of kids our age, we have that kind of concrete mindset of seeing is believing. and they don't really believe something until they see it in front of them. And so, since I'm not seeing any of my friends getting sick or any of my family getting sick, the mindset might be, I'm going to go play basketball, or I'm going to go hang out with everyone, or I'm going to go to a party or something like that. And so I think until it won't really set in my opinion, it won't really set in until we actually start seeing the effects of it in our own lives and communities and everything.
It's funny because it reminds me of Evan when we had a class together like 3 months ago. We were researching the coronavirus, and it was this huge deal, but not in America yet. And we were like researching it, and we were like, what is this? Is this even going to affect us? Is this even relevant? And as we're reading about this deadly virus, he and I are planning what we're doing that weekend. And it's just crazy how fast times can change, and just how clueless we can be sometimes. And so I just hope that we look at, that as an example of we have no idea what's to come, and hopefully we prepare for the worst and it doesn't happen. That's just kind of the mindset I'm in. But that's crazy how fast times change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. What about you, Alana? Do you have anything that you'd like to say about this while we're on this topic?
Yeah, I've noticed like a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I know that I've talked to about this have been like, because of Corona and because we're quarantined right now, like I want to be like, they're in like a rebellious mood. Like they want to like go cause ruckus and like go throw a party or like do something that they've never done before, like jump off of a bridge into like a river, or like they want to do crazy things like bucket list things because of what's happening right now. And I think it's kind of like that YOLO mindset where it's like, wow, I took for granted so much when I could actually go out and do these things. And now that I can't, I want to do as much as possible and like live as much as possible. So I think that has a lot to do with why kids are going out these days.
And I feel like part of it's human nature in a way, like, when you don't want your dog to chew up something and it's really expensive and really nice, what's the first thing they go after is that object or that thing. Or same things with babies, the most fragile thing in the house that they have no interest in, all of a sudden they want to break it and touch it and smash it. And I don't know if it's human nature or primal instincts or what, but it seems like when we're told not to do something, we want to do the opposite. And I think that's especially more prevalent in teens. I think we are told by our parents what to do, and, school, and especially high school, is this very systematic, discipline thing. And we're told not to do something, and it's like all the more want to do it. And so I can definitely see that happening a lot more now that not only are our parents not telling us to do something, but authority and government are telling us not to do something. And so I think kids are just itching to rebel. And that's definitely, I think, becoming more and more prevalent as the restrictions are getting tighter and tighter.
Mm-hmm. And I'd also like to remind anyone viewing that we are keeping an eye on the chat on YouTube and Facebook. So if you have any questions or any input or anything you'd like us to talk about or cover, that's a great place to interact with us. So, yeah. So kind of bouncing into a new subject, I think it's funny to me because I see this sort of thing, like it's developing into two teams. Like there's team, quarantine, and then there's like team, let's go out and do stuff. And it seems like each team kind of talks down on each other. I mean, and it's like, it's kind of a war. So I know some of my own friends are guilty of, breaking the social distancing guidelines and rules and everything. And then I know a lot of my other friends are, they're doing their part, staying home. They're being, mindful of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it's crazy how it divided so many people that I know. And it's just, I'm just wondering, is that just me, or do you guys see that too? Because it seems like it's just a huge division between the two. And there's like, it's such a divisive topic. Like if you start talking with someone about it and they're like, oh, wait, you stay home, like loser or something like that. Or maybe the other way around, like, oh, you're going and spreading infection, like, you're stupid or something like that. So I'm just wondering, do you guys see the same sort of thing among your friend groups and everything?
Yeah, definitely. Like Team Careful versus Team Careless, totally. I know, like, my friends are pretty split about it too. Like, I know friends who will go out together and tan at the park where there is a lot of teenagers there. I've gone and like with my family and rode our bikes out there during Mother's Day, and there's so many people at parks right now. And then I know some of them who's like, oh, I can't hang out, like I can't do this, my mom said no, I can't do this, my parents said no. Like a lot of the careful people are also influenced because their parents won't let them do anything because their parents know the importance of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the divide also comes from politics, and it's crazy that like we've turned a virus into something political. I can't quite wrap my head around that, but it definitely is a thing. And I think you look at what politics have turned into in this day and age, and it's very divided. And it didn't used to be like that. It didn't used to be one side versus the other, and one side's completely wrong and one side's completely right. And it didn't used to be like that, but definitely in at least our lifetime, that's kind of what it's turned into. And so I think it is a very divided time, and it's sad because at the end of the day, this is affecting both parties, all different types of people. The virus doesn't discriminate. And so it is hard that it is such a divided topic and that we have turned it into something political. But I would say that divide comes from what we have become as just kind of a country as a whole, and how we let these kind of things separate us. But on the contrary, too, we have seen a lot of, people come together and make light out of it. But, you can't deny that there is that divide that you do see, Evan, and I totally see it too. And I think everyone who's affected by this sees it as well. And in my personal opinion, I think that's kind of where it comes from.
Mm-hmm. In a rare opportunity, I had to talk to in my job. I had to talk to a customer because the person that usually does was out then. So I went up and I was, of course, 6 feet apart, just to get that out there. And he was a middle-aged guy, and he had two of his sons with him that were about my age. And I was helping them out, and he brought up the coronavirus, and he was just saying, oh, it's all hoax. Like, it's like, I don't see it here. It's like, it's not happening and everything. And I can only imagine, like, these kids, the sons of his are my age, and this is where they're getting their information from. This is probably one of the largest influences in their life is their dad. And yet he's, telling them like, oh, it's not real, go do whatever you want. It's you're fine. It's not going to affect you. It's all a hoax. And I'm quoting him when he says it's all a hoax. And it was just astonishing to me to see, he was just denying all of these things, and like that's everything that's going on. Like, I'm pretty sure that the world wouldn't shut down over a hoax. Like, we would know by now if it were fake. So it's just astonishing to see, like, this is one probably a lot of teens are getting their information from their parents, and how their parents choose to interpret it. Like you're saying, Francesca, whether, wherever on the political spectrum, and how they choose to interpret things is really affecting on how their kids act. Because I see, like for my mom, for instance, she interprets things a certain way, and I often find that I agree with her. And maybe some way, because I didn't do my own research, I'm just automatically agreeing because it's mom, right? And so luckily she's, at least from my opinion, doing her correct research, and so I'm believing hopefully the correct things. But just seeing this guy come in when he has 2 kids my age, and they're just believing that it's a hoax. And it's just kind of sad that the biggest influences in their life are the ones that are probably causing the most damage. So I'm just wondering if you have anything to say about that or something.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say, oh, like what you were saying, sometimes your mom has an opinion or belief, and you trust that she's done her research and you just side with mom. But that could be something like, do we think we should have taxes on this or whatever? And you're like, yeah, what, mom says, yeah. But the problem is that this isn't like taxes or dealing with that kind of stuff. This is dealing with safety and people's lives. And it's something that I think out of anything that we will ever come across in our lives, this is where we need to be fact-based and safe and protect ourselves and others. I think it's not really always about us and what we want. It can just be about what's going to help other people. And it's a time when you see a lot of true colors in people, and if they want to be selfless or selfish. And we're all high schoolers, and we all have lost a lot of important milestones and moments and experiences, but we get to choose how we're going to handle that. And I think out of any time, this is when we need to kind of pick and choose when we're going to handle it in the selfless versus selfish way.
On the subject of like being like the community coming together, I feel like one really cool thing about this, I guess, like a bright side to this, is that it's not only bringing like our country together, it's bringing like almost the whole world together, because like a lot of countries have been affected by the coronavirus, and it's not just us. And I feel like normally we can't relate to anything anyone is doing in Australia, but right now we can, or China or wherever. But now like we can, and even just in the US, we normally couldn't relate to something that's happening in Texas, but now we can. Like, it's just like something that I've seen a lot on social media of just like people coming together and like communities helping each other out. Like, I have volunteered on some occasions, like handing out free lunches for people in the neighborhoods that aren't working and can't afford food for their kids. And so like it's just really cool how we're all like trying to help each other out and try to like get through this together.
Yeah, I think I do see a lot of that, and sort of, everyone fellowship. And I mean, we are all in this together, but some people, I think where the issue lies is some people think they're in something different than they actually are. Because we all are in the midst of a pandemic and a pretty scary situation if you look at it. But some people just like, they think they're in this together, but they're thinking that they're in something else. They're thinking that they're in perhaps the last few weeks of this pandemic, or perhaps, they're thinking that they're, there's going to be a vaccine very soon, or that, for some people, like I was mentioning, that they're in the midst of a hoax, which I just still astonishing to me thinking about it. But yeah, I do see a lot of community and people coming together, but it's just sad that the division really lies in, I guess, information. A lot of misinformation on Instagram, like you're saying, on social media and Facebook. And it really just matters, what you pay attention to on there, because we all pay attention to different things. And I just heard on the radio today that Facebook is cracking down on misinformation, because it is playing such a large role in how people are treating this. And so they're cracking down. They're trying to remove posts, give people warnings, like stop doing this, because it's impacting people in a negative way. So I mean, it's cool, good for the sites that are doing this, but it's just people just believe anything at the drop of the hat. So yeah.
So on our Facebook, we have a comment, and she said, I work at a hospital and my 13-year-old won't come near me, even though I shower immediately when I get home and do what I'm supposed to keep us safe. I used to think he was really scared of the virus, but now I'm thinking it's more of an attention-seeking behavior. And so I guess, how do you guys feel? I know, Alana, you have essential worker parents, and so what are your thoughts?
I think that, like, I don't know if it's attention seeking per se. I think it's just like the way that 13-year-old has probably gone about this is either gone two ways. He thinks that it's a joke and he's making a joke out of it by like pretending to be scared, or he like is actually really nervous about it and he's only gotten like true information and like really scary information, and that's what's influencing like his decision. Because I mean, you do work in a hospital, you know, and like I just had a doctor's appointment virtually because I'm not allowed to go to the hospital right now. But like, I don't know. What do you think, Evan?
I mean, it is, that's really unfortunate that someone would act that way. I also have, my mom is also in a position in the medical field where she is coming in contact with a lot of potential people. The people are potentially infected with this. And I think it comes down to if she is in my household and she, you know, she's my mom. And for me, I feel like that's a risk that I'm willing to take to go, you know, see how she talk to her, see how her day was, you know, hug her, all that kind of stuff, just personally. But in the case of the 13-year-old, it's really, for me, I have no clue, you know. It could be so many different things. I know a lot of kids who jokingly do this kind of thing, like Alana was saying, with their parents. For the first couple weeks, I thought it was kind of funny to, you know, she'd come home and give me a hug after she got home from work because I would get home before her, and then I'd be like, whoa, mom, like, you know, you got to be careful and everything. And it was more of a joke then, but now it's just so routine. But I know a lot of kids, it's a similar situation. Their families have been pretty divided. I know one kid really isn't home a whole lot because, you know, he doesn't want to be around his family. Or I know also another family where the mother isn't home so much because, you know, she's at work, and when she is home, she kind of separates herself. So it is kind of sad to see that the pandemic is it's getting into the households of you know, the people involved, which is everybody, I guess. But it's just kind of it's just surreal to me to see how this is, you know, really coming into our homes and affecting our lives, even within, you know, the comfort of our houses. But yeah, Alana or Francesca, do you have anything? I feel like you would have a much better advice or something than I would.
My dad's an essential worker as well, and there's 3 of us kids in the house, and all 3 of us are handling it totally different. And one of the reasons I joined this show is because my mom is also a counselor and a therapist, and so her insight on how everyone's handling it is that there's not one person that's handling this the same way, and everyone's anxieties and fears are being, you know, coming out in different ways, and no 2 people are the same handling this. And so I mean, obviously we don't personally know this 13-year-old, but it's a scary time. And I think that also most 13-year-olds, I think, have social media, and there is a lot of fear coming out onto the media. And I don't think as a 13-year-old I would know to research and, you know, have those coping skills to calm myself down. So I could totally see how a 13-year-old might be freaking out. And like I said, everyone's handling it completely different. So I think everyone's just handling it in the best way, and they're coping in the ways that are making them feel safe, because right now the world feels really unsafe.
Francesca, I was going to jump in here if you've got, if that'd be okay. I'm wondering, I would imagine if the parent is asking this, he or she may be wanting to know how to approach it. And there's a parenting effectiveness training guide that helps with teens. And the idea is that everything that someone does is trying to fulfill a need. And so what you're wanting to try and understand is you're trying to understand what your 13-year-old needs. It sounds like what you're saying is, does he want attention or does he want safety? And the first thing is you want to respect what it is he's asking for, and maybe come alongside him and say, he or she, I want to understand you more, and ask questions on how you can help that person. And I think it would also be good to express your feelings too. It's just, when I can't come home and, hug you, it hurts. It doesn't feel well, and I want to understand you more. And then the other thing is your 13-year-old consistent? Is it just with you but playing basketball in the park with everybody else? And these aren't things that you want to come and say, I got you moments. If your teen is inconsistent, what that means is, what's their need? They may want attention. They may want space. They may be angry because they're not getting what they want to do, right? But the secret with teens is to be collaborative, come alongside. I want to seek to understand, and then express how their behavior is impacting you from a very compassionate standpoint. So it works whether someone is being attention seeking or they really are in fear. You can take that same approach.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm very glad that you're here because I was completely stumped on that question. So yeah, thanks for that. So something, hopefully that's resolved before I jump forward, but something that kind of came up during this mini kind of conversation was something that Francesca was saying, was that there is no good news. And that has played a large role in how, I go about my days, because whenever I look toward, a news source or something, it's not saying anything positive. It's saying, it's saying all bad news. So it's really that sort of that attitude, or that just how I'm receiving this information through this lens that everything is not good news, just kind of makes me just a little bit more skeptical of what's going on, because I know it's just a little voice in the back of my head saying, there's got to be good news out there somewhere. So like, is this really believable, or are they just trying to scare me? And so I just start working it up and, churning all these different bad ideas in my head and everything. And I know that it's not sensible, but it's just in the back of my head. I'm like, I should question everything, even though I really shouldn't, when it comes from, a consistent, reliable news source. So I'm just wondering if you guys, how do you feel about consistently always receiving bad news? I mean, I can't remember the last time I turned on CNN and it was like, hey, by the way, this amazing thing happened, but rather, by the way, we're still amidst a pandemic and everything is horrible. So I'm just wondering, do you guys, how are you receiving not getting good news, or how are you receiving, or how are you dealing with only getting bad news?
Well, I'm just gonna kind of counteract you super quick. I have seen a couple videos and stuff on like focusing on the good this year, and just like trying to find like the good that comes out of this. And I noticed that like our earth is really benefiting from this, like that people aren't going outside as much. I think it's one of the like rivers, the really popular rivers in Italy that they use to like travel on. It's like clear, and it used to just be so like mucky and nasty, and like our like ecosystem and like our ozone is doing great right now. So that's some good news for you, Evan. You're welcome.
I appreciate it. I know that I'm not saying there isn't any good news. I'm just saying I like that is good news. I appreciate you bringing that little bit of happiness to the call, but I'm just saying that's not what's being presented to everyone right now, at least from my experience. Like, I have to seek good news. And usually I'm lazy when it comes to this kind of stuff, so I just wait for the news to come to me. And that's not the news that's coming to me. The news that's coming to me is, prolonged lockdown. It's, a higher death toll every day. Or it's, Russia is now about to pass the US and amount of infections and it's just bad news. And I have to seek good news, and I'm glad that you are. We are different in the way that you would seek it, and I'm too lazy to go after it. I just wait for it to come to me. But I'm glad that there are people like you that would seek the good news. So, Francesca, how about you on the topic of good news versus bad news?
I think that it is easy to see all the negative news, and sadly, what's being reported right now is what's happening. And I think it is easy for the media to, it is dramatized, and it is for, most news stations are for profit. And so the more insane news is going to get more money and more views. And so I think it is important that we prioritize seeking good news just for the sake of our mental health and, keeping ourselves, feeling safe and like things are going to be okay. But it's interesting because if you turn on, a local station, almost all the commercials are going to be about coronavirus, and every brand has already come out with their, commercials regarding the virus. And a lot of those are very positive and uplifting. And I was watching one the other day that had to do with, people coming together, and not to undermine anyone who's been sick and all the workers who are, working tirelessly. But I think 30 years from now, we're going to look back on this in a more positive light. At least I hope, and that we did see things like, our environment, kind of rebuild itself. And, there were tons of people that came together and had some really beautiful moments where we learned to make a terrible situation into something relatively positive. And so I guess my hope is that, in the future, we do hopefully get to see the positives of this without undermining what we're learning from it, and also the negatives that have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad that I'm starting to see that the trend is that there's no trend, and it's just more me than everyone else. But so yeah, it's uplifting to see and hear perspectives like that I don't have, and but now hopefully I've gained insight from you guys and into the good news portion of this whole crisis and everything. So I appreciate that. But so I just kind of want to, hopefully we can cap that off. I feel like we've covered that. But I just kind of want to loop back around. I was thinking back to the careless versus careful sort of topic. But so I don't feel like we covered the would you rather question so much, because I feel like there are some people that don't want to go back to work but have to. Like maybe in your case, like I really don't want to go back to work, I really don't want to risk this, but I have to. Like they're being forced into these sorts of situations. Some people, their parents have been laid off, so maybe they might be the new source of income in their household. Maybe they might be the new provider, and they might be the only one that has the job. So I'm just wondering if we can just kind of loop back and maybe run that over, like run through it real quick. Just explore a little deeper into people who want to go or who don't want to go back to work, or maybe go back into these social situations, but are kind of being forced to.
Yeah. It's kind of scary. And I think most employers are going to be, flexible with their workers. But part of me also feels like, because of how drastic things changed and how there wasn't much of a segue into this, it just kind of full throttle happened at once. It does bring up the question to myself, when will I be ready? This was kind of a traumatic, moment where we're I'm 18, I'm getting thrown into this adulthood, and the first thing that happens is this, and I'm like, okay, how are we going to handle this? And so I do ask myself a lot, when will it feel normal? When will I be okay with wanting to hang out with friends? I feel guilty if I even think about wanting to. And so obviously right now I don't think I'm ready to go back to work. It seems like a little too premature, but I also do, ask myself, will there come a time when we will feel like, okay, it's time, we're ready. And I think a lot of teens we're still developing, and this is, we're not adults, this is the biggest thing we've lived through. And so I think it will affect us long term, in terms of interactions and jobs and just wanting to go back to what life was. And so I think we've talked about this before too, but just it proposes the question of how will life change, after this, because it's quite the milestone in our lives.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that's something that we should all like take a minute and think about is like it's never going to be the same as it was before. We're forever going to be impacted by what's happening right now. And so I think that that's very important and that's very impactful and like something that every person, let alone teen, needs to think about. And I'm going to take that and start the sign off because it is time to go. So bye, guys. Thank you for watching. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Alana, Francesca, Evan, and Kevin. Thanks so much for joining us for Quarantine. I did want to comment really quick because I was thinking about what you said, Evan, about like, it does seem like news is a lot of negative information that comes at us, and something that a friend of mine challenged me to do. And at first I thought, no way, but then I did it. And it was actually really helpful. Was I kind of did like a social media cleanse. And I picked, because I have like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I took Facebook and Instagram and I unfollowed and deleted everything that was news related or like political. And so that I had social media places where I could go that was just like animals doing funny things and, my friends and family. And so I could go places and still be on social media, but have it be like positive, good stuff. But then like, if I really feel like I need like the news and negative stuff, I could go to Twitter because I follow all the news stuff on Twitter. And that way I wasn't, and I also turned off all of the like alerts on my phone so that I wasn't getting those news alerts because I often found they were negative information and it was just giving me anxiety. So anyway, it was just something that I did recently and it helped tremendously. So the social media purge challenge has been issued and we'll check in with you guys next week and see how that's going. But thank you so much for joining us today, everyone on Facebook and YouTube. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 4:30 for Quarantined. We also, this is our first of 4 live events this week for Quarantined. We have tomorrow, we have one on how to talk to your kids about COVID. So maybe our audience member that was like having the 13-year-old struggling with COVID, that would be a great one to join us for. We have 2 live events coming up on Thursday, how to use mindfulness skills to get through the COVID pandemic, and also Table Talk at 7:30 Wednesday night. I apologize, my dogs are wrestling in the background. Speaking of the little comedic relief we all need right now. And please go to our Facebook page for our schedule of other live events. Thank you again for joining us, and thanks to our production partner, Matt at Hand in Hand Productions. And with that, we hope to see you for our live event tomorrow. Thank you.